Good morning, everyone. I regret that I'm not able to be with you all in person today, but I certainly do appreciate this opportunity to share with you some of the work and the research that the Vision team has been conducting. As our team is working to make recommendations for proposed pathway forwards for both our buildings and property, we knew that it was very important for us to first stop and take a step back, take a chance to learn more about our local community, and to take a deeper dive into the demographics of the area. To complete this research, we've utilized a product by Experian called a mosaic. This is a household-based consumer lifestyle segmentation system that classifies all U.S. households and neighborhoods into 71 unique types out of 19 overarching groups. This provides a 360-degree view of choices, preferences, and habits of individuals and households within our community. Now, the data from these studies is quite overwhelming and can really take some time to process. Today, I've taken the data and filtered it down to the most important information that we've learned about the demographics of our area, things that we think will be helpful as we strive to bring our church into the local community while still focusing on our mission to love, serve, and live as Christ. So for our research, we used a segment that is roughly a 2-mile polygon that surrounds the church. The map you're seeing now shows the general area that was part of the survey. It includes Statesville Boulevard west to West Ridge Road, then down to portions of Sherrills Ford Road, with NC Highway 150 or Mooresville Road serving as the southern boundary. Then we go further into Salisbury and including the neighborhoods like Fulton Heights, Meadowbrook, Hidden Creek, Milford Hills, The Crescent, Eagle Heights, and part of Country Club Hills. And this also includes both Catawba College and Livingstone College and various other public and private schools. Once this report was completed, we received the results back listing the top 15 population segments that are included in this area. You probably can't see them on this screen, but this is the list of the top 15. For purposes of today's presentation, we're going to just focus on the top 5 that surround our church. So the top 5 demographic groups surrounding our church include number 1, the urban ambition, which is 10.3%. Number 2 is the passionate parents, making up 7.2% of the population. Number 3 are the suburban sophisticates, making up 6% of the population. Number 4 are the established in society group, making up 5.8% of the population. And then number 5 is the urban legacies, making up 5.6% of the population. Now, as we begin with each of these, I'm going to share some more details on the specific demographic in the area. First, sharing just the general overview demographics, and then we'll go into the mission insight for each one. So the first is the urban ambition, which again is 10.3% of the 2-mile radius around the church. This is typically Generation Y singles and single families established in mid-market cities. Some key features for this group includes their impulsive recreational shoppers. They are singles and/or single parents, generally are office workers, are very adaptive to technology, and also frequently enjoy playing video games. So for this urban ambition group, the average age of the head of the household is 31 to 35 years old. The estimated household income is $25,000 to $34,999. This group typically rents their homes and live in multi-family types of residences and typically average only one person per home. And we'll now move into the mission insight details for this group for the urban ambition. Their religious perspective is looking for heroes of faith, and then spiritual issues identified are feelings of guilt, anxieties about abuse, and shame. So we'll now look at the common church presence for this group of urban ambition. This group typically is not so much concerned about being a member of a church, and they prefer a blend of traditional and personal spirituality. This group has a respect for clergy and is open to mentoring relationships. They also value church social programs and are committed to always getting ahead. This group is interested in spirituality but feels disconnected or alienated from the institutional religion from their childhood. They tend to live independently and impulsively, and unless they are facing a personal crisis, the church is not a compelling destination. Churches that connect with this group will not wait for them to show up, but will go out into the community to meet them. And this group is also likely to connect with a church that is traditional to their upbringing, but also gravitate towards churches of any name or denomination that provide relevant programs for recreation and relationships, and inspirational and strength to keep going. The mission insight for each of these categories does break down into several different areas and preferences for this particular group. For purposes of today's presentation, we're going to focus just on the facility preferences for this group. So for the Urban Ambition group, they're not really picky about the church architecture, and they gravitate towards traditional church buildings because it's familiar and usually feels safe, but any building will do. This group is also concerned about personal safety and health, and also expects good outdoor illumination, illuminated hallways, clean restrooms, reliable security, and working fire exits. So we've made it through our first group. We're now moving to our second highest demographic in the area, the passionate parents, and this group makes up 7.2% of our community. Typically, this group is described as young single parents with cost-conscious mindsets in second city apartments. Some key features of this group is they're single parents, they enjoy city living, they are very ambitious, and consider shopping as entertainment. In this group, the average age of the head of the household is 19 to 24. The estimated household income is typically less than $15,000. They do rent their homes and live in single-family households, and the average household size is one person. So we'll now move into the mission insight for this group. Their religious perspective is, if you happen to meet God, tell him I need a break. And then their spiritual issues of concern are feelings of anger and frustration, and then anxieties about fate and abandonment. So the common church presence for this group, they consider the church a partner in parenting. They enjoy family-friendly worship. They're focused on personal growth and material success. They also focus on seeking respect and are strong for social action and advocacy. This group perceives the church as potentially helpful to improve their personal and family life, and for them, faith is an important part. Most are transient in their housing, and they're also likely to volunteer in local communities or join some type of protest march. To them, the church seems like an extended family, and the church buildings are an important place to socialize. This group often looks for churches to offer daycare centers and parenting support programs, and then they also like to partner with other social service and healthcare agencies, and they're concerned about the safety of their neighborhood. So in terms of facility preferences for this group, they are comfortable with older, more traditional buildings, but they do prefer the church space to be multi-purpose, and they're more than willing to renovate, upgrade, and change space to make it more multi-purpose, open, and interactive. This group does not have a strong sense of sacred space, but they do maintain strong appreciation for classic Christian symbols such as a cross, an open Bible, or praying hands. They also prefer their worship centers to be plain and flexible, with good acoustics and sight lines to quality video and projection screens, and then also prefer very flexible seating in their worship area. Now our third demographic is the Suburban Sophisticates, which makes up approximately 6% of the area around the church. This group is best described as sophisticated, downscale singles and couples who live in modest, small to mid-sized towns. Some key features for this group include retirees, individuals who are financially secure, individuals who are AARP members, those who have established homes, and this group is also known as avid newspaper readers. In terms of numbers, the average age of the head of the household for this group is 66 to 75 years old. The estimated household income ranges from $50,000 to $74,999. This group typically own their homes and live in single-family households with an average household size of 2 people. Now moving to the mission insight for this group. Their religious perspective is God's mission, our community, my church. Spiritual issues of concern include feeling one's age and loneliness, and then anxiety over death and estrangement. The common church presence for this group, they're typically longtime resident members of the church. They are loyal to the denomination. They're typically policymakers within the church, and they always seek harmony among everyone. They also are very disciplined when it comes to stewardship, and at the same time also cautious about innovation. A good way to describe this group is they're gracefully aging in place. They love their own church, and they sink deep roots into the community, but may not always see the diversity that is encroaching into the neighborhoods around them. When it comes to change, this group is more anxious about losing old friends than gaining new members, and they prefer smooth cruising and harmonious churches that don't make too many waves. Their children and grandchildren consider the church as a spiritual home, and like I mentioned earlier, they often serve on church boards and committees, sing in the choir, support youth ministries, and other church activities. For them, Sunday morning is the center of church activities, and they prefer worship that's predictable and profound, that is structured and reasonable, and without too many surprises. And for them, the church is the primary center of socializing. And then they also feel that the church maintains continuity with the past and provides multiple opportunities for fellowship. So the facility preferences for the Suburban Sophisticates, they prefer traditional-looking church buildings. However, many of these were products of the church growth movement of the 60s and 70s and have a modern yet predictable architecture. This includes wooden beams, padded pews, and more of an open chancel area with wider aisles than other churches. They also believe sanctuaries are designed for presentational worship and organ pipes rather than a worship band ensemble. So this group also prefers symbols that are classically Christian, such as crosses and open Bibles and praying hands in the sanctuary. They also look for educational wings that resemble school buildings within the community. The group tends to focus on defending past tactics rather than adapting to new technologies. To this group, video screens in the sanctuary are seen as a distraction. Offices are expected to have computers, but the hardware and software may be a little bit dated. And they're also slow to see the advantages that justify the cost of such upgrades. Change to property or upgrades to technology is also very stressful for this group to consider. And now we'll go to our fifth largest segment, the established in society, who make up 5.8% of the community. Key features in this segment, this group, they're avid TV watchers, they prefer a more rural lifestyle, they're more senior citizens, they prefer home-centered activities, they have more conservative values, and they're cautious money managers. Now, looking at the numbers for this group, the average head of household age is 76 years or older. Their estimated household income is $25,000 to $34,999. They are typically homeowners in a single-family dwelling and a household size of 2 individuals. The religious experience overview for this group, their religious perspective is faith of our fathers living still. And then spiritual issues are feelings of loneliness, anxieties about displacement, and abandonment. So looking at the common church presence of this group, to them church is very important. They're often long-time or lifetime members of the same church. They're very active in boards and committees, and they're very loyal to the denomination, but also considered as low risk takers, but concerned about the youth and the future. This group has deep roots in the community and church, and many of their friends are the members of the church. They believe in church renewal, not transformation. They believe in evolutionary change, but not radical change. And they prefer consensus decision making, not clergy control. This group prefers small to medium sized churches, wanting the church to grow, but they're also anxious that it might become too big. This group also automatically worries more about losing current members than gaining new members, and for them, faith, family, and community are pillars of strength. They also avoid extreme options, radical policies, risky ventures, and hasty decisions. So when it comes to facility preferences, they've lived in the same place and attended the same church for a long time. The architecture of the church reflects the traditional design of traditions from the first half of the 20th century. They prefer steeples or towers and pointed windows and doors and memorial courtyards. They also prefer the traditional sanctuaries with pews and rows, with a center aisle and lots of hardwood. We're now going to move to the fifth largest segment in our community, the urban legacies, which make up 5.6% of the population. This group can be described as middle-aged, sophisticated singles established in modern urban settings. This group is known for modest budgets. They are influenced by celebrities. They're also impulse shoppers. They do tend to have a lower housing value and a modest education, and prefer to style on a budget. So by the numbers, the head of household for this group is averaged from 51 years old to 65 years old. The estimated household income for this group is less than $15,000 annually. This group tend to be homeowners of single-family dwellings with a household size of one person. Looking at the mission insight and the religious experience overview, the religious perspective of the Urban Legacies group is hoping that prayer works, and their spiritual issues of concern are feeling lonely and frustrated, and anxieties about guilt and death. We'll now look at the common church presence for this group. For this group, they consider the church the center for socializing and personal support. They feel that worship gives them strength for tomorrow. They're very pragmatic towards life and faith. They're also social justice volunteers in their communities. And for them, the boundary between success and grace often gets blurred. And this group is also very open to miracles. When we look at the facility preferences for this group, they've often grown up in the church and appreciate the ambiance and symbolism of the church building, and they prefer buildings that quote unquote look like a church. Also prefer in the exterior to have some type of identifying architectural elements. This could be a steeple, an archway, pointed doors or windows. Sanctuaries are often traditionally designed with rows of chairs, a center aisle, and pulpits. And then the offices and classrooms are often a mix of old, recycled furniture and equipment from the church. This group is also known to volunteer to supply their expertise and elbow grease to maintain the church building. And they also prefer classic Christian symbols or pictures or murals throughout the church. They're very pragmatic about the property and willing to change almost anything if there's a clear beneficial mission and purpose. And also they see the church as more of a multi-purpose community center for useful programs rather than a theological statement. So again, like I mentioned in the beginning, much of this data can be overwhelming, but I do hope that I was able to share some of the most important details that have been used by our visioning team to prepare our recommendations for the future of our church buildings and property with you. There is certainly much more information available from these reports, and if anyone is interested in getting that additional information from the reports, feel free to reach out to either Jim or myself. We'll be happy to share the information we have with you. But again, I thank you all for the opportunity of sharing this background information, and hope that the remaining presentations from our visioning team will help to bring you fully up to speed on the great work that has been taking place over the last several months.